Welcome to Recap King. In this video, we will explain Sin Nombre. This movie tells the story of a teenage girl from Honduras who wants to illegally migrate to the United States with her father and uncle. However, on the way, they were involved in an incident with members of the crime gang Mara Salvatrucha until a man recklessly killed his boss to save them. Will they manage to escape from those dangerous gangsters and settle down in the United States? Let's find out in Sin Nombre.
Sin Nombre.
Sin Nombre begins by showing a man named Willie, or better known by his nickname, namely El Casper. At home, Casper was sitting pensively looking at the very beautiful painting of nature displayed in front of him. Casper is a member of the Mara Salvatrucha gang, one of the most feared criminal gangs in his area. Casper then left the house and was about to go somewhere. After meeting the other members of the Mara Salvatrucha gang, Casper then headed to the house of a 12-year-old boy named Benito. Once there, Casper shows Benito his stolen items, one of which is a camera, which he plans to keep as a keepsake, before selling the rest of the stolen items to dealers. After that, Casper took Benito to meet the gang leader, a man named El Mago. It is a tradition that the young boys who want to join the gang will take mental and physical tests first, one of which is to be severely beaten by the gang members and must be able to withstand all the punches and kicks for 13 seconds. After successfully passing the violent initiation stage, Benito was then given a new nickname Smiley because he seemed to be smiling widely, even though his face was bruised and bleeding. Meanwhile, in another place, a teenage girl from Honduras named Syra was seen preparing to leave the city with her father and her uncle. Syra and her family plan to migrate to the United States, although they do not have the official documents. Syra's father plans to take his daughter to New Jersey so that Syra can have a better life than if they had continued in the city. The scene then switches and shows Casper receiving a text message from his girlfriend, Martha, asking him to come to see her in her house. Knowing that his girlfriend was in a bad mood, Casper had brought a flower to cheer her up. Fearing for Martha's safety, Casper keeps his love affair with Martha a secret from his gang. However, this actually makes his gang often doubt Casper's loyalty. After meeting and making out with Martha, Casper then took Smiley to base camp, where he introduced him to the gang members who were there. When Casper and Smiley looked around the room filled with homemade weapons, El Mago came up to them holding his baby. After that, El Mago invites Smiley and Casper to meet a rival gang member who is being locked up for daring to enter their area without permission. El Mago then ordered Casper to get the man out of the cage and ordered them both to execute him. El Mago then gave a homemade weapon to Smiley. Seeing Smiley, who looked scared and doubtful, Casper then hugged him from behind, helped the young boy to kill the man, and fulfilled the duties from El Mago as part of his initiation before officially joining the gang. El Mago then tells Smiley that he is officially a member of their gang from now on, and Smiley already has family and relatives who will help and protect him from other gangs. After that, El Mago asked Casper about his absence when he was carrying out the last task. He knows this because one of his right-hand men, a man named El Sol, reports to him that Casper is often absent when other gang members are doing the work ordered by the leader. Casper didn't explain anything to El Mago, and El Mago didn't seem too bothered because he already considered Casper his younger brother and loved him very much. 3 days later, Syra and her family finally arrived at the border between Mexico and Guatemala. Arriving in Mexico, Syra and her family decided to take a break before continuing their journey, because to get to the border of the United States and Mexico, they had to travel quite a long way for several weeks by foot and by train. The scene then switches and shows Casper making out with his girlfriend on a tower. When they were busy making out, suddenly El Sol came with his men. El Sol hates Casper because El Mago always defends him, even though Casper often causes trouble. El Sol's arrival there is to inform Casper that El Mago will have a meeting and ask all the gang members to come to the abandoned burial area near the railroad tracks. El Sol glanced briefly at Martha and warned Casper to be careful. Sometime later, it was seen that Syra and her family finally arrived at a train station and were about to continue their journey by train. However, when they boarded the train, suddenly, an announcement was heard informing them that the train bound for the United States border would be delayed for an indefinite period because they had problems with the train line to be passed. Hearing this, Syra and her family, as well as other immigrants who had been waiting eagerly for the departure of the train, felt disappointed and had no choice but to wait at the station. The next day, El Mago and his gang seemed to have gathered at the appointed place. At that meeting, El Mago openly questioned Casper's absence from doing his job with other gang members, which made it difficult for El Sol and the other gang members. Casper didn't seem too responsive to El Mago's words. After criticizing Casper, El Mago later stated that he planned to raise money to buy weapons so they could face attacks from other gangs. In the middle of the meeting, suddenly Martha came there to meet Casper. Seeing Martha's arrival, Casper then got up and told her to leave immediately because it was too dangerous. However, El Mago had seen Martha's arrival and then approached them. El Mago then orders the rest of the gang to beat Casper and Smiley for 13 seconds while he takes Martha away from there. El Mago turns out to take Martha to the cemetery and intends to overpower her. However, Martha fought, so El Mago then pushed her body. Unexpectedly, Martha actually fell down, and her head accidentally hit the rocks very hard, causing her to die instantly. After getting his punishment, Casper then rushed to find the whereabouts of Martha. However, El Mago said that she was dead, and casually told Casper to find a new girlfriend. Hearing that his beloved girlfriend had died at the hands of a gangster who he considered his own brother, Casper looked so shocked and cried in frustration. El Mago, who did not look guilty at all for what he had done, then told Casper not to lie to them and neglect his work and threatened to kill him and Smiley. Afterward, he orders Casper and Smiley to help him do important work for their gang's future. Shortly after that, El Mago takes Casper and Smiley to La Bombilla, a location along the railroad tracks where would be illegal immigrants, including Syra and her family, hide on passing trains to the United States border. After a long wait, would-be illegal immigrants who wanted to go to the United States could finally board the train and continue their journey. The next day, when the would-be illegal immigrants were busy protecting themselves from the heavy rain with the plastic and raincoats they had prepared in advance, El Mago and his gang climbed onto the train's roof and robbed the passengers. El Mago gives Smiley a homemade weapon, while Casper gets a machete. The three of them then threaten the passengers to hand over their valuables. Seeing the arrival of El Mago and his flock, Syra's father then protected his daughter. But unfortunately, El Mago had seen Syra first, and immediately took her away from her father. When El Mago was about to rape Syra, Casper didn't just stay silent and immediately slaughtered him. This was solely done by Casper to avenge the death of Martha, and because he did not want any other girl to become victims of El Mago's abuse. After killing El Mago, Casper then told Smiley to get off the train and return home. Smiley walked along the train tracks and finally got back to Mexico. Meanwhile, after killing El Mago, Casper seems to be brooding alone on the train's roof. Two men were seen approaching Casper, about to kill him. However, Syra immediately warned Casper by shouting, so Casper was saved. Arriving at the base camp, Smiley told El Sol and the other gang members about Casper who had killed El Mago. After paying his last respects to remember El Mago who had died, El Sol was then named the gang's new leader. El Sol accuses Smiley of collaborating with Casper to kill El Mago. However, Smiley immediately denies the accusations and pleads with El Sol that he be sent on a mission to kill Casper to prove his loyalty to Mara Salvatrucha. Hearing this, El Sol agreed and ordered Smiley to kill Casper, and forbade him to return home before completing his mission. After that, El Sol contacted all his herd along the railroad to warn them about Casper, who has now defected because he killed El Mago. The scene turns back to Casper. He was still sitting pensively alone when the train stopped at a station. Casper then receives a text message from El Sol warning that he will surely meet his end sooner or later. Syra then approached Casper, trying to chat with him while offering him some food. Because Casper didn't respond, Syra left. But then, Casper called Syra and introduced himself as Willie. Syra again got up the courage to approach Casper when they stopped at the next station because she seemed to care about Casper, who had saved her from El Mago. However, her father told Syra to stay away from Casper because he is a very dangerous gangster. The scene then switches and shows Smiley, who finally arrives at one of the areas controlled by El Sol's gang. After learning that El Mago had been killed by Casper, they then help Smiley to find Casper and kill him. After following the train tracks, Smiley and the El Sol gang get information about Casper, who is still on the train, which is headed for the United States border. Meanwhile elsewhere, Syra, who does not heed her father's warning to stay away from Casper, then engages in a heart-to-heart conversation with him. When they finally continued their journey, Casper learned that there would be an immigration document check at the next stop, so he invited Syra and her family and other prospective immigrants to get off the train and circle the station to avoid being checked. Elsewhere, Smiley and his gang get into a fight with their rival gang for entering another gang's territory without permission. There was a shootout between the two gangs who were at odds with each other. Luckily, Smiley was able to escape from there. After successfully evading the checkpoint and returning to continue his journey by train, Casper was finally accepted by Syra's family and several other would-be immigrants for helping them. However, Casper decided to leave them at the next stop because he didn't want to endanger them. However, unbeknownst to Casper, Syra was secretly following him. Since Syra insisted on going with him, Casper had no choice but to let Syra follow him. Casper then invites Syra to the house of one of his relatives, a middle-aged woman who is also El Sol's accomplice. The woman told Casper that yesterday El Sol contacted her and asked about him. After giving food and some change of clothes to Casper and Syra, the woman then told them to sneak away to the border by hiding in a car that would be transported by truck to the border. Elsewhere, Syra's family continues their journey, even without Syra's presence. But on the way, they were intercepted by the police, so the would-be immigrants ran in panic. Because he wanted to escape, Syra's father accidentally fell from a moving train and was eventually crushed to death by the train. Meanwhile, Casper and Syra, who were hiding in the car, turned out to have been framed by the woman, who then informed El Sol of their whereabouts, so El Sol and his gang rushed to confront the truck. However, Casper and Syra managed to escape before being caught by El Sol and his gang. The two of them then arrive at an immigrant shelter, where Syra meets a man who is a prospective illegal immigrant who departs from the same station. The man told Syra that his father had been crushed to death by a train, and that her uncle was arrested by the police for not having official documents. Hearing this, Syra didn't want to believe that her father was dead. Syra, feeling down and frustrated, then rushed to the chapel, which was not far from there, to calm down. Casper then caught up with Syra and tried to calm her down. After Syra's father died and her uncle was arrested by the police, Casper decided to accompany Syra during the trip to the United States until she arrived safely in New Jersey and met her relatives. Casper and Syra finally continued their journey on foot until they finally reached the river, which is the border area of the United States and Mexico, which means they are only one step away from the United States. Casper then meets a smuggler who agrees to take them across the river one by one. He paid the man with his camera with pictures of his late girlfriend and insisted Syra go first across the river using a car tire as a buoy to prevent drowning. When Syra was halfway across the river, suddenly El Sol and his gang appeared and started chasing Casper. Casper rushed to escape from the gangsters who wanted to kill him. When he managed to avoid the pursuit, Casper finally arrived at the river bank. However, Casper instead met Smiley, who pointed a gun at him. Smiley turns out to be more siding with their gang, so the young boy shoots Casper in the chest without hesitation. Smiley then shot Casper 2 more times and finally shot him in the head, killing him. Smiley apparently wants to become a full-fledged gang member and kills Casper to prove his loyalty to the Mara Salvatrucha gang that houses him. El Sol and the others finally arrived at the river bank and saw Casper, who was already lying lifeless. However, the gangsters then fired bullets at Casper's body until their bullets ran out, as if to make sure that he was really dead. Meanwhile, Syra, who managed to cross the river, could only scream at the sight and struggled to hold the tire while crying hysterically. The film ends by showing Syra calling her relatives in New Jersey from outside a shopping center building in the United States. Her uncle is finally released from prison and attempts to cross the border again. Meanwhile, Smiley has a tattoo on his lips to signify his loyalty to the Mara Salvatrucha gang. The moral that can be learned from this film is never to plunge ourselves into criminal gangs or get involved with them for whatever reason, because the only way to be free from them is death, and the safety of those closest to us will not be guaranteed.